Thanks very much, everybody, and thanks, Heather. Good morning, sisters, brothers, non-binary siblings. After seeing that film again, I was really wishing that I'd worn my trousers today. Wore them yesterday, can't wear the same thing 2 days in a row. Anyway, I hope that you found the film as inspiring as I did. I watched it a couple of weeks ago and immediately emailed Leslie Warren, who was behind all of that, to say how strong it was as a piece and how enthusiastic I was and Selma was about the prospect of using it for so many other purposes than this one today. But it was brilliant that you all got to see it this morning. It was great to hear the voices of so many women activists reflecting on the struggles that they'd encountered and that they'd won. It was a good reminder of how far we've come on the road to gender equality, as Heather was just saying there. And just look again, all three of our office bearers for the second year in a row are women. But there's a distance that we still have to travel. There's a distance that we still have to travel together to achieve gender equality in the workplace and in wider society. Several of the motions debated yesterday underlined that fact, the fact that we still have a long way to go towards equality. Equality for the sisters in our movement and in our families, for our mothers and our grandmothers, for our daughters and the girls and the young women that we teach, and for the boys in our classes and our own sons and the men that we know, who too often are under pressure to conform to hyper-masculinized gender norms that are oppressive for them as well as for the women and the girls around them. Particularly after the setbacks of the pandemic globally, there's a lot of ground to be recovered on gender equality. And given the EIS's strong track record on the equality front, and me heartened by the turnout and the participation at the Equality Fringe yesterday, I'm really looking forward to continuing our onward journey alongside you, our activists, with equality even stronger at our core and at the heart of our collective bargaining. Colleagues, it's a real pleasure and an absolute honour to be addressing you this morning as a first-time speaker as General Secretary Designate. The first time that I spoke at AGM was in this hall, probably at this very same podium, I think about 15 years ago, when I moved a motion on support for refugees, and I think Tom Tracy might have shouted, "Further heard," in his own inimitable style. It was so moving yesterday to hear so many voices continuing our commitment to speaking up for refugees and asylum seekers. That's something that to me is emblematic of our union and something that I am incredibly proud of. For today, Larry asked me to talk a bit about my priorities for the future, and I will do that in a minute. But I want to start by acknowledging the strong legacy that Larry will be leaving us as a strong campaigning union and as a professional association of significant standing in Scottish education. There can be no doubt that the last 10 of our 175 years with Larry as General Secretary have made us even stronger, made from girders. In that 10 years, Larry's leadership has been as much about encouraging leadership amongst our members as it has been about his own individual skills and talents. And we all know there are many, many of them, and they will be much missed in the months and years to come. From EIS headquarters to our individual branches, Larry's legacy gives us firm foundations to build on, and I want to record my gratitude to him for that. As the next General Secretary, as an EIS member, as a trade unionist, and as a teacher. So firm foundations to build on what? Well, everything that you've been talking about so passionately and eloquently over the past couple of days and for quite a few years before this as well. But it's the morning after, the night before, so I'm not going to go over all of that ground again, all that ground that you've already covered. I'm just going to talk about a few of the areas that I think that we really need to go full pelt, and we really need to get started on that work quite smartly. So the obvious and pressing priority is our Pay Attention campaign. We've staked our claim, nailed our colours to the mast, and the incoming Vice President has even got her nails done in the Pay Attention campaign colours. So we now need to win. For pay justice, for gender pay justice given our demographic, and for union power. And listening to our speakers on the issue of pay over the last couple of days, I know that we've got what it takes to win this. To win it because it's simply unacceptable that teachers and other public sector workers would be expected to bear the burden of yet another crisis that's been created by the economic vandalism of the Tory government and a cabinet of millionaires utterly morally bankrupt and more intent on callous racketeering and profiteering than they are on caring about people and supporting recovery. Colleagues, comrades, this has to be another one of those no-passer-an moments in our trade union history. We can't let these people with their anti-human ideology do this to us. Not just for ourselves, because if they can do this to us as professionals and as organised trade unionists, what more will they try and get away with doing to the people who are least able to fight back? The parents and the carers of the poorest young people that we teach. More hunger and food insecurity, more health inequalities, more mental health anguish, more poverty and poverty-related stigma in our schools and colleges, and poorer experiences and outcomes and fewer life chances for the poorest of our young citizens. So this pay campaign is as much about the EIS playing its part in fighting back against the Tory assault on the lives and dignity of working people and those who can't work, while they and their cronies are raking in billions off the back of Brexit, COVID and every other opportunity to accumulate wealth at the expense of the rest of us, as it is about winning a pay rise for teachers themselves. And we can't allow COSLA to peddle the myth of the one workforce agenda, or the Scottish Government to sit quietly there on the sidelines, being let off the hook by a raft of egalitarian-sounding rhetoric that's in truth about pay suppression for teachers, and by dint of that, the rest of the public sector as well. We know one workforce is utter fallacy, and I have a sense that the other public sector unions know it as well. I heard a Unison colleague speak at this year's May Day demo in Glasgow about the chicanery of COSLA on the one workforce agenda. And I knew that we should be talking to them and other unions about how we dismantle this mythology, because that's just what it is. We've got a meeting set up with Unison next week where we'll be looking to explore how we can fight together on public sector pay as one trade union movement, but within our own individual collective bargaining fora. For all of that, as a profession, we're in the early stages of recovery from the pandemic. To quote our Inverclyde colleague yesterday, we've only just begun. Our Pay Attention campaign needs us to be fighting fit. If we're to win a pay rise that protects teachers' incomes from the worst of the cost of living increases, from every corner of the union, we need to keep building what will be a formidable display of our union strength in the end. We've started building this: the press statements, the campaign materials, the branch meetings, the petition, the social media activity, the well-judged percussive response to the Cabinet Secretary yesterday, and the demo outside this building later on this morning. All of this building from our strong foundations and our well-toned muscle memory from the 2018-19 pay campaign to win this one too. With full-blown organising, comms and political campaigning, synchronicity of actions between headquarters and across local associations, we'll be ballot ready, strike ready by October. With a strong industrial action strategy mapped out so that we're strike ready and strike able when the time comes. From the speeches and applause that we've heard this AGM about pay and the other interrelated injustices, it sounds like you're well up for taking this on, and so am I. You've already been busy engaging members in your schools over these past weeks, and after a well-deserved summer break when EIS headquarters will still be working behind the scenes, we'll be asking you, our activists, to continue building the campaign. We'll let COSLA and the Scottish Government see that we never stop. We'll let our members see that we never stop, and we won't stop until we have that 10%. Some of you might have picked up a wee bit of Ange Postecoglou creeping in there. Dedicated followers of football or not, we want all of our members to get involved in the Pay Attention campaign. No bystanders, no wallflowers, some gentle persuasion here, some cajoling over there, some outright requests for people to take on specific roles over there too. No bystanders. This pay claim is for everyone. We need to make sure that our members are included in the make sure that all of our members are included in the pay campaign activities and all of our other activity too. We need to keep working to support and engage our members from typically underrepresented groups, our disabled, Black, Asian and minority ethnic and LGBT members, All of our members' voices needed to be included in the cacophony that will be demanding a cost of living pay increase for teachers, and who by rights actually deserve more than 10%. 10% is restrained given what you're still owed after a decade or more of relative overall pay decline. And when we win this campaign, it will be a win for all public sector workers. As you know, colleagues in the trade union movement, we're about equalising up, not allowing ourselves to be bargained down. As I said, I want us to be equality focused in the Pay Attention campaign, and equality focused and inclusive in all aspects of our work. That's a core element of our trade union identity and a commitment that makes us who we are. Another thing that makes us who we are is the strength of our professional expertise, our knowledge about learning, teaching and assessment, and about what can actually deliver social justice in the classroom. You know, and I know, that smaller class sizes are key to that. That having fewer young people in our classes enables more quality interactions, greater one-to-one support, more creativity and calmer environments that support the inclusion of learners with diverse needs. We know that smaller classes are fundamental to reducing the poverty-related achievement gap. And of course, class sizes of 20 could make a significant dent in the excessive workload of our members. So I want to help us realise the vision of our 2020 campaign, map out every campaigning opportunity and take every political chance to press on class size and class contact reduction. This is about social justice for our young people, and it's about fair work for teachers whose workload continues to be off the scale. It's way past time for politicians and employers to tackle the workload that's driving our members' stress and literally making hundreds, if not thousands, of them ill. The Cabinet Secretary's speech yesterday was pathetically weak on this front. Some lip service acknowledgement of the effort of teachers during the pandemic, and then a failure to give assurances that the promised extra 1.5 hours contact time reduction would be protected for teachers' own use. She came yesterday with nothing. No crisis response to teacher workload, in spite of the fact that teachers have been on the front line of the crisis response to COVID for the past 2.5 years nearly. Larry and I gave her a strong step for a hint earlier this week that she should have come yesterday with some good news, something to salve the pain. She came with nothing but lukewarm words that merely poured salt on the wounds. Colleagues, after yesterday's ominous response to the question on class contact reduction, the Scottish Government and employers need to be on notice that we're coming after 2020, and they better be ready. Colleagues, as you've also been saying over these couple of days, we need to take action to end the scandal of the under-resourcing of ASN. And so much of this AGM's debate has underlined what's been going on in ASN over the past decade, and underlined that it's another educational and industrial injustice, a national disgrace in fact. Young people disadvantaged and distressed, violent incidents, parents let down, and teachers shouldering the workload and emotional burden of all of that. We can't go on just accepting this. We've done the consultation responses, we've been on the working groups, we've given the evidence to the Scottish Parliament and to Angela Morgan, been there, done all that, and still the Scottish Government and local authorities are body swerving the real issues. We need to think seriously about how we can step up campaigning on ASN so that all young people can participate fully in education, can enjoy it and can benefit from it, as is their entitlement and indeed their human right. And for our members, this is another fair work issue that we need to campaign vigorously to resolve. Government demands that teachers close the poverty-related attainment gap. The EIS has signed up to the mission insofar as schools can mitigate the poverty that politicians create. But we are clear that to accomplish the mission, teachers can't have their hands tied behind their backs. Too few ASN specialists, not nearly enough multi-agency expertise to hand, and no one listening when teachers gather and present the evidence that says quite clearly that a child needs extra support. We need enough good quality ASN provision, no more passing the buck between Scottish Government and local authorities on whose job it is to provide it, no more dissembling. Without the resources to deliver proper ASN provision, the promise of the ASL Act is a hollow one. Everyone knows it, and we need to start shouting even louder on this. to campaign seriously alongside parents and third sector organisations for the resources that are needed to support the most vulnerable members of our school communities. Education reform gives us a platform to build on the gains that we've won in the education reform process so far, and we need to seize every opportunity that it offers to advance our objectives. On ASN, as I've said, on proper staffing for early years education to include qualified teachers, to increase the ethnic diversity of the profession, building on last year's AGM resolution to push local authorities to do more on this, and there's a bit more coming from the Equality Committee very soon in that regard. For the empowerment of teachers and the professional trust that must underpin that, making sure that we influence the future of inspections while we still have them, and we still seem to have them, getting rid of the scores on the doors because education is not a game show. Going after what CFE promised on curriculum design, finally decluttering the primary curriculum once and for all, and redesigning the senior phase assessment and qualifications for the breadth, depth and enjoyment of learning that those learners and their teachers were promised. Sound assessment and parity of esteem between so-called vocational and academic learning and qualifications. There's so much for us to go after in the reform space, and I'll be looking for all of you to help us to do that. We need to make sure too that the replacement of the SQA isn't a superficial rebrand or a retrofit, but a complete demolition and new build with EIS voice at the heart of the new governance arrangements. Making sure that the replacement body for Education Scotland is one that actually does what it's supposed to do and provide meaningful professional guidance and support on curriculum, pedagogy and assessment, again with teacher trade union voice at the heart of governance to make sure that this happens. Colleagues, we're already right in about the Hayward Review, and we're poised for the next stages of the education reform process beyond that. Thanks to all of you who've already signed up to be involved in the next stages of that particular piece of work. And over the next weeks and months, we'll be looking for more of you to share your thinking on reform, because I think that that was a huge strength of our submission and our contributions, in all the meetings that we had on the Muir Review, the fact that we had such a strength of member voice, permeating everything that we did in that regard, and we want to keep that going through the next stages. And while there's a lot to do in the short term around early years and school education, I'm committed to taking on the challenges in further and higher education too. To continue working with FELA on GTCS registration of college lecturers as a way of pushing back against dysfunctional college management that looks to undermine the professionalism of lecturers and plays fast and loose with lecturers' terms and conditions at every turn. And with EIS EULA, in response to the funding crisis that's driving casualisation and driving down pay, I want to work with all of you as well. Finally, colleagues, I think that we need to think about recovery for everyone who makes this union work. Everyone will be familiar with the motto for the City of Glasgow: people make Glasgow. People make this union. The reps, the activists, the EIS staff, all of those people make this union what it is. And as we try to recover from the impact of the pandemic and to support our members to do the same, I'd like us to explore what we want our own recovery to look like, how we might build in more pastoral support for the reps and staff who are doing difficult work to support members who are in a very fragile emotional state. How we can create more opportunities to bring reps and activists together for learning and network opportunities, and how we support EIS staff to keep doing the brilliant work that they do in the service of the union and its members. All of this, colleagues, is so that we never stop. Thanks very much. Thank you.